Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Raad Life. Today, I wanted to bring on a friend of mine, a gentleman who owns an audio video business here in Southern California. He is also a fellow member of the American Society of Interior Design Orange County chapter, as I am. And he also serves on the board or in an advisory capacity as our audio video chairman of that committee. And so I want to bring on Justin Worley to talk about some of the changes that are happening with technology and with demands that people have today after being sequestered in our homes. Justin, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. I was just saying that we both are on ASID, and I wanted to bring you on today because I wanted to talk about some of these changing needs that people have with audio video. So I just want you to start, if you wouldn't mind, introduce people to your company, who you are, and how you got actually into this, how long you've been doing it. And then I want to kind of kick into, usually we talk about trends and what's trending and what fixture is or whatever, but I want to have a little bit deeper conversation about people's changing needs, whether they are businesses or they're at home. I mean, the home thing, I don't think people ever thought they were going to spend as much time at home together in January as they ended up doing come July, right? I mean,
Right.
it's kind of a crazy reality that we're living in. Good and bad comes out of it, right? But so why don't you kick us off and start us off with who your company is, and I'm going to throw up the logo and the website behind me while you're doing
Awesome.
that so people can go check it out. And how long you've been doing this, Justin?
Sure. So my name is Justin Worley, and the company, as you see behind Raad there, is Audio Concepts. I've actually been doing audio, video, and actually what I've evolved to calling it is home technology. I've been doing this for 20 years. I have a large company in Arizona for the last 15 years that's kind of a self-sufficient company, and I kind of got a little bored and moved out here to California about a year and a half ago and purchased this company called Audio Concepts. This company's actually been around since before I was born. This company was started in 1979. And so I took over about a year ago. We did a full remodel in our showroom, specialize in a kind of the higher end home technology systems. And we service out of Long Beach and out of Newport Beach. So
Right.
we do a little bit of LA County and a little bit of Orange County. We partner with ASID in Orange County, and it's been kind of fun. It's for me. I've been getting to know California, getting to know a whole new market, and just kind of how things go out here, and still doing what I enjoy, which is helping clients learn about home technology.
So how did you get into this? So you've been at it for 20 years. This is something you always knew you wanted to do? Is something you kind of fell into?
I've always been a techie. Growing up, I was the type of kid that took things apart to figure out how they worked and then put them back together. And most of the time they worked when I put them back together. And then, so right out of high school, I had a couple friends that were already into home technology. And at that time it was, more like just speakers throughout the house and stuff like
Right.
that. There wasn't even really Wi-Fi systems then. So I started actually working as an installer for a company. And did a lot of years out in the field where I was pulling wires through, homes that were being built, and just kind of moved pretty quickly from that part of it to being more interested in the design and how the systems go together.
Yeah.
So I started being more of a system designer, and then eventually out in Arizona, I opened up my own company where I did the system design and hired some really good guys to do the installation. We grew
So
that company from like myself to about 35 people in a matter of about 6-7 years.
I think it's fair to say that those same wires you ran 20 years ago are probably the same wires we're pulling out of places right now, right?
Oh yeah, it's definitely changed.
Yeah.
But one thing's always been true, and especially now because I hear a lot of clients talk about everything being wireless. There's a
Yeah.
lot of really good wireless options, but I always still say put extra wires in because there's always a chance you might wish you'd have ran an extra Cat6 wire or fiber optic wire. You're going to run into having a need for that. So that's always been true. Even 20 years ago when we were pulling wires in homes, you always wish you had run that one extra wire. So I always say over wire, it's cheap to do that.
Well, and to your point, I mean, I think if you've been around long enough before wireless was an option, you also realize, for example, that as convenient as wireless is, sometimes you still don't get the solid connection, shall we say, that a wired situation provide you, whether it's an Ethernet wire directly to a router, or directly to a Cat5 wire, or and especially if you're integrating systems, right, and you're centralizing. I mean, there's a lot of options that are wireless, but there are almost options that came out of the fact that you can go in and tear up walls and run wires. They're kind of like a solution to that. So right. I totally get your point, because we fall into this thing. Oh, if it's wireless, it must be better, and it's sometimes not necessarily. And if we, as you and I were talking before earlier, was if you've got multiple users in the house, that wireless signal becomes again an issue. It's like if you're one of those people that is not really getting your computer to work as fast as you wanted, you're probably looking for a wall jack somewhere to plug in an Ethernet or something, right?
Yeah, or at least at minimum, exactly what you just said, but at minimum, the Wi-Fi network that you have is kind of the backbone of everything that is wireless. So if you put a wireless camera up, or you do use a laptop that's wireless, or you stick a TV on the wall and you use wireless connection for Netflix,
right?
All of those things connect to your Wi-Fi. And so there's a lot of options in Wi-Fi that are like mesh networking and wireless there. And every time you do that, you're cutting your bandwidth down, which means as you add more and more and more devices onto that network, you're just getting one step closer to having something that's not fast enough to keep up with what you're trying to do.
Well, and I'll share a personal story, recent story, where we basically were adding security cameras and things of that nature. And, up till for the last for as long as we've had a wireless router at my folks' house, it was convenient and sufficient, right? We had issues with consistency of signal because of the location of the actual wireless router, and where you would be sitting, and the construction of the house, and certain structural elements in the house and so forth. And of course, we did everything from plug-in spreaders to amplifiers to whatever over time as they came out. And so we still had to do that. However, we realized we needed to up the boost the bandwidth from the actual supplier, from the actual provider, Cox. And so I contacted them and did that. And it's interesting, because when we realized it the most is when we had almost 3 generations of people in the house for about a week.
Yep.
Okay. And there were some people visiting, and there was just not enough juice, literally, to run these things. And especially when you're used to having it on your cellular signal, which is really individualized send, you're like, why is this thing moving slow as molasses? And so we ended up, okay, well, we got to update the bandwidth. So we updated the bandwidth. And when I was doing that, the guy was nice enough to ask me, like, well, what are you planning to do? Are you planning to add anything else? And he explained to me exactly what you just said, that just because I may be going from, 65 to 150, that's 3 times as fast of, a bandwidth, kind of, if you will, just simple math. But if you're then adding a Ring camera on there, every one of these is going to suck up a certain amount of bandwidth. And then all of a sudden you're looking at it and you go, okay, yeah, I upgraded 3 times as fast. I added 3 more items onto the network, and I'm back as slow to the speed that I was before.
Yeah. So I think the average home now, I believe it's getting up to over 100 connected devices to your Wi-Fi network.
Well, and if you go to a smart home situation, you got wireless components to that, right? I mean, well, no, Alexa, turn off the light, turn on the light, like all of that stuff. So and you're paying for that. I mean, right now, I think, it's normal, the same as everything else, like with minutes on cellular, right? Eventually, the basic amount of allotted bandwidth will be as such that it reflects the reality out there, but you're still paying good money, to upgrade your bandwidth. So knowing what you need, and here's where it becomes critical in my mind, as your needs change in your home relevant to technology, as you start having to work out of the house more often, because you're now with a company that basically says, we just want you to come in 2 days a week, and the rest of the time you can work from home, right? And you're like, this is kind of great, because, at least at the beginning, this is kind of great because I get to be around my family. And then about 5 months into it, you're like, oh my God, I have no separation between my personal life and my work life, right? So now I need a space in my home to be allocated for that function, and where I could literally go in and close the door, and for those whatever time I'm on the clock, I'm there, right? Not a lot of people have that option. So, you know, you need to know what your needs are, rather than when you're in the middle of that conference call with a client, you got two kids basically that jump onto the same network, and now you're basically dragging on your feed, or it's intermittent, and it's a critical call, whatever it is. You kind of, our needs for technology at home have changed, I think, from, oh, it's nice, to it's a must have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the Wi-Fi system and your connection to the internet is every bit as important, and just especially since the COVID and everybody's been working from home. But it started a few years ago, where it's absolutely every bit as important as your running water and your electricity.
Right.
You just don't have a home that has it. The only downside I see is there's a lot more standardization in the electricity and in the plumbing, and making sure those systems go in your house a certain way to a certain code.
Right.
Where with the Wi-Fi and the network, there's a million devices, and some of them are great and some of them are awful. And you kind of like jump online and maybe try to do a review about one, and you try it out and you realize that didn't work. I can't do a Zoom conference to save my life. So I think it is important that you work with professional to kind of look at the house, look at the layout, figure out where the wires need to be pulled to, and then set up something that works reliably for you.
Well, Justin, is there actually, I mean, I'm just thinking about it from my side of the fence here, like in terms of construction, like you got electrical requirements of certain minimums that has to pass not only certain approvals by the city when let's say you're doing a remodel, but you also have to pass inspection on site, right? Mm-hmm. So electrical has that. Water has that, some of these services that you're talking about has that. HVAC, air conditioning has that. Heating has that. Do we actually have any guidelines of that nature that have to be met relevant to home technology?
Well, the closest they have is you can have a low voltage contractor's license, which, we do. But there's really not a lot of checking on what wires you've installed in your home to make sure they're going to meet your Wi-Fi requirements.
Yeah.
The only testing, though, the only inspections they're going to do is make sure the wires that are ran through your home are not drilled through the wrong beams, not running along, the wrong areas. There's no way is anybody ever looking at your home saying, this home is wired right, and when you get done and you call up your service provider, you're going to have good internet signal. Nobody ever looks at that during any phase, unless you bring in a professional company to help design that.
And yet, just to project, it could very well be that's the path we're on. That at some point there's going to be a minimum requirement that is almost like a right to have. Like I have the right to running water. I have the right to actually hitting a switch and turning on my light bulb. It's interesting. I never really thought about it until we're talking here, but it could very well be that we find ourselves in a situation where you will have a licensed home automation field that will actually require a submittal of set of drawings, a pulling of permit, and running all that stuff just like before. I mean, I get it where it's not really going to be scrutinized in the case of whatchamacallit, like remodels or retrofitting. Mm-hmm. But in case of new construction, and I would be surprised if we looked at commercial situations and some of that stuff was actually not already in place. It may just not be applying to residential.
When you get on the commercial side, what you are going to see in place is a lot more relevant to security.
Makes sense.
Every commercial setting is a little different on what they may need, as far as Wi-Fi access and internet network access.
Well, it's kind of almost like an alarm system, right? There has to be some minimums, and it has to be connected correctly and all that stuff. I get it.
There are definitely requirements to have an alarm agent's license, which is also part of what we're talking about.
Right.
But again, there's really very little checking up on it. Like if I'm working on a new project around the corner and that home's being built ground up, there's not going to be anybody show up and say, you didn't run the right alarm wire, you're not set up. The smoke detectors are probably about the only part of that is checked, and that's usually done by the electrical inspection.
As part of the electrical. Yeah, it's my experience too. So you know what? Since we've opened this door, let's talk about this for a minute, because what I'm thinking is, with this lack of oversight, chances are when it comes to audio, video, home automation, it's kind of like the Wild West out there, right? Like
Absolutely.
right. So how does a person who, especially now, realizes that they actually need a little bit more serious, um, advice and help in this capacity, in this department? How does somebody make the selection? How do you know? I mean, obviously, word of mouth referrals, previous experience. Hey, do you have an audio video person you've used? Whatever, that kind of referral is never going to go away. But how about somebody that doesn't have an idea? Nobody around them knows it. How do you go about selecting a person worth working with? Because that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
And it's not cheap either. Like, I mean, between equipment and wiring and all this stuff, I mean, it adds up.
It's definitely an investment for sure. And typically, if you just kind of shoot from the hip and maybe Google the first company that comes up, you might be a little disappointed, because there's about 100 different ways of designing a system like this. And you might end up with somebody who really puts the time into keeping up with the technology, or you might end up with somebody who's still, living with stuff that was 3 years ago and recommending that. There's a couple things I would suggest. First is, there's a couple organizations out there that are designed to keep our industry, which I'm just going to call home technology, low voltage industry, up to speed. They do trainings, they do certifications, and they have a website, CEDIA, CEDIA.com. They actually do Find a Pro on their website. It's kind of like ASID if you're looking for an interior designer. So you can go on there, you can see the certifications, you can see how many of their technicians maybe have different levels of certifications for home technology or network or low voltage or security. The other thing is, I would say, just do your research. One of the things that we do is, on our website, we do a lot of like tutorials on projects that we've installed and the how and why of certain ways we've designed systems. So I think if you do a little bit of watching YouTube videos and stuff like that, and you find somebody that can show a previous project, talk about why they did that project a certain way, then you can start to get a comfort level that you're getting somebody that's staying up to the latest technology and is going to listen to your needs and then implement them in the way that makes the most sense.
What's funny is I did an earlier interview today on another one of the shows that I co-host, and we talked about this thing about transparency, and it's interesting, because I think in a lot of fields that are either commerce based or some sort of retail based, sometimes you want to hold that expertise, or you're told you should hold the expertise close to your chest or close to heart, and not really share it until somebody's already engaged with you. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about how that's really not only archaic, but it's actually very foolish, because if somebody is an expert, you're sharing of that openly, and, like, to your point, explaining and going through and sharing with that's actually not only an opportunity to present yourself as an expert, but it also builds trust, that you're not trying to basically hold this, look, hire me and I'll tell you.
Right.
This is what we did, and I think we could help you as well. And we're going to look at your situation, come up with something that's pertinent to you. But this is what we did, and I'm openly sharing it. Right. I think it's interesting that you say that, because I completely agree. And I think when it comes to something like this, like I said, I mean, a lot of people, my experience they've thought about it at a later point. That's the other thing I would personally advise. I think you probably agree with me, is that something like this, you should encounter or consider bringing on board an expert of that nature for home automation earlier in the process, or as early as possible in the process, right?
Absolutely. The most successful projects we have typically start when we're introduced at the architect stage. I mean, you're putting the plans together for the home. There's certain things you can design into the plans that are going to make the home technology work better for you. So when we have the ability to start that early on, then really we've kind of covered all bases. And then from there, every step that we start a little bit later, you kind of you have to find things that maybe you have to make do with. Maybe there wasn't an equipment cabinet designed in the home
Right.
that housed the equipment the correct way.
So now it's sitting above the shelf of the closet. Now it's an eyesore in the corner. Yeah, I completely agree. I think people, there's two things: audio, video, and art. Okay, in my experience have been the two categories on a remodel or on a whatever renovation that tend to suffer because everybody wants them. But then you get sucked into it's the structural and it's the this and it's the materials and it's that, which is not important. It's very foundational. However, those two items end up suffering, and they basically, it's like, okay, let's see what we have left in the budget at the very end, and now you're trying to basically do it. Well, with art, you could get away with that a little bit more because it's surface mounted. But if you're trying to basically integrate a home, especially like home automation and a smart home, you're trying to integrate it, and at the same time, you're trying not to have it look like a showroom where everything is basically on display on the wall, like it's integrated, it's hidden, it's seamless, whatever. I think, in fact, like we were just talking about, you may actually have an impact on the needs or the ultimate needs of what the system is supposed to do for that client. You may actually then have feedback to give to that structural person or that architectural person or the electrical person. You may have to, you put all this stuff in, and we're talking about low voltage. That's great, but you know what? If it's an old home, do we need to upgrade the panel? Do we have enough circuits to basically dedicate to this? Are we gonna double up and triple up on circuits, and now we're gonna basically trip the system when we basically put on the boomer? I mean, it's like there are things that if you start early, you're likely to end up with a much more satisfactory product at the end. And so, like I said, the art and audio video tend to be some of the things that only, we're almost done now that I've closed up all the walls and the ceilings. I mean, I had a project exactly like that last year. We're all done. Okay. They were going to basically they thought about it. They were going to, no, I'll just take care of it wirelessly. I'm going to go down to this area. I'm going to buy that equipment, whatever. Right. Then they priced out the equipment, and they're like, maybe we need to find a different way to do this. And then we're like, okay. And so it ended up where we basically had already painted the ceilings, had already painted the walls. Now we're making cuts in the ceilings, we can cuts in the walls. It's okay. It can just be, and the contract's like, it's okay. We can just patch it and paint it. And I'm like, okay. Did you
But we could have planned it earlier.
But then it cost them more because they had to basically spend time with somebody who knew what they were doing to blend in the texture that was already on the walls and in the ceiling, so that when I walked into the room, I didn't see a patch that looked like a little brighter or darker than it. There's this domino effect. So and so let's talk about some of the exciting options that people have. Right? You've been at this thing for 20 years. It's changed dramatically, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Okay. Geez, there's all kinds of fun stuff right now.
Or you know what, Justin, if it helps, maybe talk about a couple of installations that you've recently done and some of the things that you guys were able to do. Maybe it gets people excited that way.
Yeah. I guess I would kind of back up and kind of go a little off subject, because the number one thing we're doing right now, the TVs are exciting because there's these new models called the Frame. They're probably the most popular thing we do. You put them on the wall, you turn the TV off, and a picture shows up, and it stays on there, and it looks really cool. And you don't really.
So it's like our work. So basically, what I was just talking about, you just basically made it work with. So call Justin, because then you address your audio, video, as well as your artwork.
And your art, and we can do it all after the fact. No, there's TVs have come a long ways. They're always getting better. I mean, we just put an 8K model on display out here, which is just crazy because there's no content for 8K.
Wow. Yeah.
There's a lot of cool technology coming out. The wireless and the networks are faster now than you could have ever imagined they would be 5 years ago. I still kind of stick to the idea that that's the one area you want to, like we were just talking about, put some thought into and have a hardwired Wi-Fi network, which kind of doesn't make sense, but it does if we talk a little more about it later. Or
well, and to your point where you just said about the TV, I think when you're building something like that, not only is it an investment, but you should be building it for capacity in the future. Like you should be like don't limit yourself to what the current capabilities are, because you know that they're going to change, and they change faster and faster as time goes by.
Absolutely. As far as, the normal things, the home automation is just a market that's absolutely taken off. You've got some really cool things that some of the big companies are bringing to the table.
Yeah.
Obviously, everybody's seen the Alexa commercials or the Google Hello commercials.
Yeah.
The really neat thing, especially for Amazon and Alexa, is they've kind of made that a fairly open platform. So all that Alexa really does is provide an input device, which is a box you talk to.
Yeah.
But then they've made it really friendly to play with tons of other systems.
Right.
So if you just wanted to put one light switch on the wall and have the Alexa talk to that one light switch, so you can say, Alexa, turn on the kitchen light, you can do that. Or if you want a sophisticated system, we do, Control4, Crestron, Savant type systems, where you can actually integrate the Alexa and have it do all kinds of things like, Alexa, I'm leaving for the night. You can have all the music shut off and all the TVs shut off and all the security arm and all the lights go off, and have your garage open on your way out, all from saying one command. So we do a lot of that kind of voice activation and integrating it into full systems. And now we're starting to see clients that are at home a whole lot more, or
Sure.
basically never leaving their home. So now we're starting to see clients that are really understanding what they want their home to actually do. Because if, this time last year we did these cool systems, but clients were always on the go. They weren't,
Right.
Maybe they had a few nights a week they'd stay home and then they'd be on a trip or they'd go somewhere for the weekend. Now we've got clients that are actually really fine tuning their system so that it actually does. I've got a video on our website where a client set up the Alexa and the Control4 system for the wake up call in the morning. So it wakes the whole family up. And then there's a notification that tells the kids what time school's supposed to start. So, 8 a.m. they say, all right, all the kids get into the living room, and it says it through all the speakers throughout the house. So there's a lot of really cool things that these automation systems do for clients that are actually in their home 24 hours a day now.
Well, and they're the time that they're spending in their homes. I mean, the EPA used to have a rating where it said that basically before COVID we spent, I think it was 90% of our time indoors. Okay.
Wow.
So it was pretty high to begin with. We just never spent it, like to your point, at home. And we're spending more time at home than we probably have ever spent at home. Home was where you went, you rested, you went to sleep, you got up, you went on with your day. Now you do everything. You work out of home. Your kids go to school out of home. People come and visit you virtually at home. It's like it's you pretty much leave the house when you basically just need a breather, because you're going to be coming back and spending a lot more time at home.
Right.
So to your point, those gathering spaces that now need to double up, and you and I were talking about, that's not a media center anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's not and I laugh because, again, making a reference to my parents' house, it wasn't that long ago, 20 years ago, where you basically built a cabinet to house a deep vacuum, not a vacuum tube necessarily, but a deep TV.
PRT.
And if it was 36 inches wide, man, you were styling, right? and it looked like, and it was all the hotels that basically had those wardrobes kind of that basically housed the TV in the top and drawer sets on the bottom, right? Those TV cabinets, those are all gone. So it gets thinner, it gets faster, it gets but that's not a media center anymore. That's not a media cabinet anymore. That's a classroom. That's a boardroom meeting, if you don't have a separate office space.
Yeah. It seems like just almost overnight, when I used to do a walkthrough with a client and try to help them design maybe a family room, great room that was surround sound. And, the question was always, do you use Netflix? Do you still have a Blu-ray or DVDs that you want to use? And overnight, the question's now, obviously you're going to watch Netflix. Obviously you're going to watch sports, but are your kids going to be, taking a music lesson in front of this TV? Do you have,
now, what are you going to do if you have multiple kids basically taking class during the day?
Right.
They're both like and you brought up a great point when we were talking before the show, where it's like, okay, if I'm using a laptop to basically communicate visually, like video feed with a teacher, that laptop now is sort of limited to my ability to be able to open up a full screen of a worksheet, for example, and do some work or take notes or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I'm typing, right? And is that the right interface, or should I have a tablet with a pen, like a Surface, for example, right? I mean, you start compounding the question, and it's going to get more and more serious as we get closer to end of August, beginning of September, with school rolling out. And you and I are both in Southern California, but like San Diego County, Los Angeles County, they pretty much announced that the next year, pretty much the whole year, unless things change dramatically, the whole year is distance learning. And those districts are jargonauts. They're like big ocean liners, right? They don't move very quickly. So if they're going to basically commit resources to distance learning, they will probably hold on to that at the very least for the whole academic year. That means that we are looking at technology needs for homes that are different than they've ever been, right?
Absolutely.
For the last, God knows, since the beginning of time, probably since, the one room schoolhouse at Little House on the Prairie or something. I'm dating myself right now, right? But basically, till next year, you got a whole year that you have to basically accommodate now. So it is not only an investment; it's going to be something that has a direct impact on your quality of life. What happens when your kids are learning on that media center, or they're trying to use their laptop to basically interface with the teacher, but then they also need some sort of other thing to basically work on. And you're actually also now having to work out of home, right? Because there's this whole dilemma: do I work? Do I homeschool? Okay, let's say that the homeschooling happens remotely with a teacher and it happens okay. Let's say you are now having the opportunity to basically work, but you have to work out of home. So now you're in an office or in a corner of the house where you are working. You have noise factors around you. Mm-hmm. You have to have interface with a client. You have to have some sort of professional backdrop. You have to have some ability to keep an eye on the kids while you're at your desk, right? So now you're adding more things like in-home security cameras. You're adding other things of that nature. Somebody rings the bell at the front door for a delivery. How are you going to monitor that? Do you have an outside camera with a floodlight? I think it's a very exciting time to kind of reimagine what our lives could look like, right?
Absolutely. It's a time, I guess I feel a little lucky to be in the industry I am in, because all of the things you just mentioned, even a few years ago, they really weren't mainstream, and some of them not even doable.
So we're not necessities either, Justin. I mean, you could, if you sat down in front of me and said that to me, I would say, yeah, great, that's interesting, but nah, thank you, I'll pass. It's the same. It's the same, by the way, when I got certified aging in place in 2008, right? We had to get to about 2018 before people actually started thinking about, well, wait a minute, I am 50, I'm taking care of a parent that's 70. I might want to bring them in because it would cost me an arm and a leg to basically put them in some sort of facility. What do I need to do? And then, oh my God, I'm only 20 years away from this reality myself. So I don't, I plan to live till 99 or whatever it is. I want to stay in my home as long as possible. The kids are out of school. I got to spend some money basically modifying that kitchen or turning that second bedroom into something else. So it's interesting. This really feels like a paradigm shift and a perfect storm. Like it's just right, and cost is going to be a factor, but more importantly, I think are going to be smart solutions. Like you're going to have, like we said earlier, it's a sort of Wild West right now. You're going to have snake oil salespeople. You're going to have people that overpromise and underdeliver. You're going to basically be talked into a lot of stuff, especially if you're price conscious. Basically, that may not be the best solution for you, and you really owe it to yourself to educate yourself on all the options, because it could very well mean a difference between a happy home, literally, and not.
Yeah, I actually appreciate that you just said that, because I really hadn't put the thought into how much the home technology right now, more than any other time, can make the difference on a happy home or not, because you are going to be in your home a lot. And
I
you,
mean, I might be tired of hanging out with the kids, and I might want to go, like, sneak into my wine cellar and basically, help myself to some, self medication. But I really also need to have a camera in there to know what the heck they're doing when I'm basically out of the room. So,
yeah,
it is. I mean, if you break it down in terms of things that you need to maintain a semblance of balance in your life, ability to manage things that are being thrown at you, the things that are now demands on you have changed.
yeah,
And the one thing that is now an absolute reality is that if you're in San Diego County or Lily County, and more likely than not, it will be Orange County as well, definitely already with certain districts, and you got kids in the house, your demand on time, your time demands just shifted.
oh yeah,
Right? If you work out of home and you're self-employed and you got kids and you've basically already gotten yourself accustomed to the fact that you have help, right? You have somebody that comes in, you don't really have time to deal with the backyard. So you have a gardener come in once a week. You have allocated, you've made justifications for these expenditures because the return on investment of those expenditures is calmness, peace of mind, the ability to breathe, having a chance to sit down every once in a while rather than basically running around and having to do yard work and, clean up after everybody. Like, these are things that we've already accepted. If you have a busy lifestyle, if you have demands that you need help with, that you already are okay with it, right? Technology could very well be that next frontier where you need to incorporate that in your home.
yeah, and it's almost going to be more important than some of the things you just mentioned.
Right.
Especially the work from home scenario. All of a sudden, your career depends on your home technology being up to par.
I mean, I'll use a very simple example. When I first went out on my own, I was up on the hill here in San Clemente, and up till that point, for about 3 or 4 years, I was working for a large corporation. I had no problem with my cell phone. No problem whatsoever with my cell phone. And I will not use the carrier's name because they're still around, but basically the carrier that I was with, okay, that particular location, even though it was atop of a hill, right? Every time I picked up the phone to talk to a client or to talk to somebody and it was a serious call, it would drop signal.
Oh.
It was absolutely unprofessional. And it got to the point where I almost wanted people to call me on the landline. But that problem with that is I was actually just starting and building my own company, and I need to be mobile and I need to have the flexibility, right? So I actually, after having been with that provider for, oh my gosh, probably about 16 years at that point, I actually had to change service providers because my technology needs were unable to be fulfilled by that provider, that older provider. Ironically, roll forward to 2020, that same old provider still has black spots and dark areas in that network that would still be a problem for me today. So
I know what provider you're talking about.
You know what provider I'm talking about? Okay, so we'll give another hint about that provider, and if anybody can pick up on the clue, they'll know who we're talking about. I used to commute from South Orange County to Costa Mesa, Newport Beach area, right off like 73 and Bison, and I used to take the 73, right? Mm-hmm. So right at the top of the 73, it never failed that I would drop signal, right? And one time I literally picked up my phone while I shouldn't have been doing it when I was driving, but the codes were not there yet. The rules were not there yet. It was early on. So I picked up my phone and I'm like, I don't know why I'm trying to do this. Like I'm trying to move my arm around to pick up the signal or something, right? And I look at my phone and I still no signal, no bars. And I look right across the phone. And on the side of the street, there's a sign that says, this part of the freeway is maintained by that cell phone provider.
Oh man!
Right? I mean, I wish I had a camera on my phone that I could take a picture of at that point and send it to Jay Leno. That's how old this story goes, right? Because it was perfect. It's like you are maintaining a part of the road that you don't even have signal on. Like, how does your crew communicate? Or is this like the sweet spot where everybody wants to go because you can't reach them from the company?
Right. Yeah.
So technology is an interesting thing. It's a cool little add-on. It's a cool luxury item until it becomes a necessity. And I think we are entering a time right now where home automation is no longer, oh, it's a nice to have. It's a braggability thing. Look what I can do. Alexa, turn on the light. Oh, look, like stuff like that. Like, Alexa's already lighting up over here because I mentioned her, right?
Uh-huh.
So that's the other thing. How am I going to shut down Alexa? Every time I mention something that sounds like Alexa, Alexa reacts, right?
Yeah.
So technology right now is actually shifting, I think, in a big way, right? And whether it's offices, which was already kind of starting, right, or homes for sure. And it's this thing. It's no longer a luxury thing that it'd be nice to have. I think it now has become in the maybe the smallest way and growing an absolute necessity. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I think it's interesting because it was very close to being a necessity a few years ago, and if it needed a little push, then the stay-at-home orders with the COVID was the push that got it well over the hump.
Well,
And
and I think a lot of these conversations for people that are not basically just hunkered down and have kind of sort of a bunker mentality right now is I think there's an agreement, there's a consensus that COVID may have not necessarily made things happen, but or come around about, but what it did is it accelerated a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
It accelerated our ability to basically work remotely. I mean, I've been working remotely for 20 plus years, right? Like you got two locations, you're working remotely. Everybody who's basically been, self-employed, entrepreneur, whatever, you've worked from home, you already were used to that. And yet, but that was not the majority of people. And isn't it fascinating just how quickly people adapted to that side of it?
Yeah,
Like like that.
it's a little bit twofold because like we have a lot of employees that have worked. Our entire admin staff has worked from home for years, 1 or 2 days a week. And when this started, initially my thought was, well, this will be no problem. They already work from home. They'll just work from home. They're already set up. And you realize that while it was really easy to make the shift to work from home, there's
Yeah.
also a lot more needs you have when you try to go working from home permanently. When it goes from just 1 day a week, you can kind of get by with, okay, I can't do everything I do at the office, but I can do most of it. And
And
tomorrow,
then I'll go to the office and I'll do the rest of it.
but as soon as you shift to 5 days a week working from home, all of a
Right.
sudden, that's where we started seeing a lot of in our own company, and then people calling on us to say, okay, we got a house full of people now and we're all at home all the time. We need to improve the Wi-Fi. We need to improve the speeds, or just flat out things that really don't even have to do with the Wi-Fi. Just, a better computer setup, or, a better TV setup, more comfortable chairs.
Right. Right. You're sitting in that chair a lot longer. You're not, I mean, one of the hardest things it was for me when I first started is there were many days where you literally woke up and went to work within 5 feet of each other or 6 feet of each other. And then that was your world.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff like isolation, tunnel vision, all this stuff that starts to happen. So not only is it technology, but there's also psychological things that you have to get your head in a different space. On the operational side of these companies, you've got basically 90% of your workforce now, or 50% of your workforce that's working remotely. Your operational systems are different. Your way of tracking team work is different.
Mm-hmm.
The way that your
Communication.
teams work and communicate is different, right? And now you are dealing with things like some of these apps that are great are out there. It's fantastic. However, you could completely go off the rails on these apps. There's nothing that basically stops you using I can't remember the one it is, but one that's being used a lot with like contractors, where you're constantly in contact with a lot of people, like for teamwork, right? But then these threads basically start becoming like inside jokes and other things. And what is the protocol? Human resources as a part of a company right now is probably looking at a completely wild new world that they have to basically navigate, right?
Yeah, yeah. My wife is in charge of the HR for our company, and between COVID, work at home orders, and all these other things that are going on, it has just been an absolute experience to keep up with everything that's changing so quickly.
I have a feeling that the word experience wasn't the one you're looking for, but then you want, yeah.
I stopped
No,
before I said.
I hear you. No, no, it's true, and I think again, is it a challenge or is it an opportunity? Is it a time for creative pivoting, or is it one for basically hunkering down and having a bunker mentality? And if you put your head in the first space, I think it's an exciting time,
Yeah.
right? And there's going to be a little bit of trial and error. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit of stumbling that happens. But I think if your intentions are to get to a certain destination, which is at the end of the day, freeing people up to do what they need to do and have a quality of life that's at least sustainable, right? We'll be past this. I mean, the first 2 months was probably like a total upheaval. Now we're in month 5. We're about to hit 6 months of doing this, right? What happens after we've been at it for 12 months? Now, they used to say that, you want a new habit, you do it for 30 days. We are way past the new habit of 30 days, right?
This is the normal.
Now, this is like people go, it's like the new normal. And I'm like, it's not the new normal. This is normal. This is, don't put a word new at it because you're trying to hold on to nostalgia. Those days are over. You're not going back there.
Yep.
So
I agree completely.
I appreciate you taking the time, Justin. I think it's a very interesting conversation. I think we've just scratched the surface. So you and I think, are going to have a lot more conversation about this. And anybody who is interested, please reach out to Justin, Audio Concepts. Their showroom is in Long Beach. It's kind of almost like on the border of Long Beach and Seal Beach, kind of in that area, right? You're actually just down the street from Second and PCH, which is a new shopping center that's open. If at some point you'll be able to get out there and actually enjoy the shopping center again.
Right.
And I'm just going to do another shout out while we're at it. So if you ever get to Second and PCH, go check out Box House, my friend Andre Husman's new location there. The second one, first one being in Newport Beach. They opened one in Second and PCH. Go check out their showrooms. It's a pretty cool showroom. It's got a lot of stuff in it. And you can reach Justin, I'm assuming, through the website. How else can they reach you, Justin, if they have any questions?
Yeah, probably the easiest thing to remember would be to go to our website, audioconceptsinc.com. From there, you can get my contact information, email, phone numbers, all of that kind of stuff.
Awesome.
Our Instagram page, our Facebook page, all of those will get right to me as well.
Okay. One last thing, because I almost forgot, and we were joking about this, laughing about this, is the other thing you guys want to keep in mind, whether you are basically using your home automations for classrooms or for work, right, is lighting. Lighting is super critical. And the reason why I actually just remembered is because lighting at Justin's situation there just kind of flickered. It got brighter, it got darker. But again, like I said, it's a learning curve. We're all learning this, right? But if you want experts that can share what's going on, and you're not getting 3 years old worth of information, but you're getting what's happening right now, and it's even moving faster right now because of COVID, reach out to Justin, audioconceptsinc.com, and their showroom, again, like I said, is in Long Beach near Second and PCH in that area, just before you go on to Naples and Belmont Shores. So, Justin, again, thank you very much, my friend. I appreciate the time. Always a good conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
All right, buddy. You take care. I'm sure we'll be in touch. And thank you, everybody, for joining us for another episode.